Okay. Anson, did you want to say something before we dove in? I saw your hand go up.
No, I was just hitting OK.
Oh, got it. Okay, very good. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm excited to be with you.
Want to say something before we
I should pause that.
I saw your hand go up.
Sorry.
No, I was just hitting OK.
Let's do this.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. All right, I've got an echo with me. That's probably a nightmare for some of you. Too many voices of mine. Anyway, I want to welcome you, all those that are watching either this broadcast as it's streamed live and or those of you that are watching the recording afterwards. We have a very special event tonight, one that you may never see again, one that is unique. We've, as a company, Pro Insight, we go around the country looking for the best professionals in each of the major categories, and meaning real estate, wealth management, mortgage lending, insurance. And we bring these professionals together on into a very collaborative experience. And this collaborative experience is not common for the typical consumer to experience. Maybe many of you that are watching this have thought to yourself, I've never had all of these professionals around me giving me advice at the same time on an important topic. And it's because that experience is reserved for the uber wealthy. And they oftentimes call that a family office. Those of you that maybe are uber wealthy or know people who are familiar with that term, that a family office is when a family has enough wealth that they have their own team of advisors that all work very collaboratively together to grow the wealth of that particular family. And the average American household does not have that kind of wealth to be able to demand all these professionals coming together on their behalf. Well, at Pro Insight, we're happy to say that we're helping to kind of reverse that trend and allow that experience to be brought into your household. So again, we go from community to community. And tonight we've chosen Lone Tree, Colorado. I've known these gentlemen for a number of months, and they are great at what they do. And not only that, but they've known each other before tonight, and they've worked collaboratively in a number of different situations to be able to bring to the consumer, to bring to your household a topic that I think is probably on the top of everyone's mind, or at least it will be after tonight, of how important it is. And the topic that we're going to discuss tonight is preparing for retirement in uncertain times. So with that, I'm gonna introduce tonight's guest panelists, and I'm gonna once we have a quick introduction of them and their background and what they do, we're gonna dive into this topic of what you can be doing right now to prepare for retirement. Whether you are actually in retirement now, whether you're just on the cusp of it, whether you're deep into it, and kind of looking at the next generation, or maybe you're just getting started on your path and you would love to have the wisdom of this kind of experience guiding you on what maybe they wish they would have done, or what they wish all their clients would do. We're going to cover the gamut on that tonight. So let me begin just by introducing again tonight's panelists. Jim Romano is an expert in real estate. Jim's been at this. Jim, is it over 20 or over 30 years? I know you've told me before, and
Yeah, over 30. I've been doing this for 32 years. Actually, just started my 33rd year.
Congratulations. Not all real estate agents say that. In fact, very few do. It's an industry that can have some people that kind of come and go. And when you find somebody who's been in it for that long, I'd say stay very close to them because they've seen a lot and gained a lot. So Jim, excited to have you here. Thanks for, again, agreeing to be on this expert panel. Now let's go to our expert in lending, Phil. And Phil, I've been pronouncing your name for the last month or so as Maher. Is it Mayer or Maher?
Whatever you want to call me, be fine.
You've heard of worse.
No, I usually go by Mayer, but yeah, whatever.
Yeah, very good. Phil, we're excited to have you here. Again, Phil has similar experience, but in the lending space. And tonight we're going to learn that not all loans, and definitely not all loan officers, are equal. That the years of experience can actually create some very different and unique opportunities that most people don't think of. So again, we're excited to have you here. Phil, anything else you want to share about your background that would kind of provide some context to tonight?
Well, I'm old, so I will totally be involved in this conversation. So, all about retirement. So,
okay, great. I love it. All right, let's go to Anson Thompson. Anson is an expert in insurance, has a great reputation in that space, and we're excited to have him here. Anson, tell us a little bit about your background when it comes to insurance and why people might kind of listen carefully based on what you've done and seen.
Well, like Jim, I've been doing this for 32 years. Most insurance people do not stay in the industry for that long. And I think it's important to try to find somebody like myself who has been through, a lot of different cycles. But we have worked all over the country providing, resources to individuals and businesses. And I just think that our business, much like every business around this round table, it's all about relationship. And so if you don't have that strong relationship with your provider, whatever that might be, whether it be legal, insurance, financial, find somebody that you trust. I always like to say that I am a grandfather, a father, a lover, a writer, and an insurance professional. So if that resonates, then I'd love to talk to you. And if not, hey, have a great day.
I love it. I love it. All right, let's move now to our final panelist, Jay Carpenter. Jay comes out of the wealth management space. Again, deep experience, somebody who's very knowledgeable, works with a lot of clients, and has, again, the perspective and experience that you won't get from somebody, from some online version, or from just your average, wealth manager. So, Jay, if you'd just give us a background on your experience, and we're excited to hear kind of your perspective on this topic tonight as well.
Great. Thanks, Justin. Yes, I've been doing this formally for 20 years, but like Jim and Anson, I've been following markets and an active investor for 32 years. So you've seen some great markets and some not so great markets over the years. And that's the key, is just helping clients through that journey, whether it starts when they're in their early 20s or whether they're realizing, hey, I need to pull the chute towards retirement in 5 years. What can I do now? How do we position things? So the goal is to get everyone retired, but not only retired, but retired comfortably and confidently. So there's a big difference there. You can retire, but then not really live the full life that you want to and that you've waited to live. So that's what I play a significant role in that throughout that process, and watch them retire comfortably and confidently.
Good. I like that. I think the biggest fears that people have when it comes to retirement is, right, not being comfortable and not being confident that they're going to have enough assets to give them the life they want for as long as they want it. So love it. Great insight. All right, let's go ahead and dive into our first topic here. Jim, you really brought this to my attention, something that a guy who is in the thick of raising a family. And a lot of the decisions are quite clear, right? What are the best schools, like the size of house we need? All of that's kind of pre-scripted because, you just have the needs of a young growing family. And you pointed out to me that when you get to retirement age and you don't have the kids at home, and you don't have to live in any particular part of the country, that while to many people that seems like it would be a whole bunch of freedom, for some people it becomes quite crippling because they don't, like, they have all these decisions, they don't know how to make them, right? So if you'd kind of kick us off on this topic of that, if people feel that way, it's okay, it's normal, and maybe just some of the consultation that you have with them to help them to work through that situation of where do we go and what do we do and how do we make this decision when it's not so clear.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, it happens for most people, and now throw in, when you're younger, you kind of qualify for a loan. You talk to your loan officer, this is much that we buy. We want to go to this school. We need 4 bedrooms, and we need to move in by school year, which is going to be, August. So throw timeline into that whole thing. And so now you say, okay, well, in that school district, at this price, there's 7 homes that meet my needs. And I'm going to go look at those 7. If I like one of those, I'm probably going to buy it. And if I don't, I'll wait. And when the 8th one comes up, maybe it's good, and I'm going to buy it. There's probably 6 other people that want to buy it as well. We'll have a bidding war, but hopefully we'll get into a house. So what happens from retirees is that they can go anywhere. There's no time limit. There's no time constraint. And they don't have to make any decisions. They can stay in their house as long as they want, usually. And they can rumble around this big house. They can get a condo, and they just don't know what they want or where they want. I mean, you could be anywhere from, I want to have a second home in Phoenix because we want a snowbird, but hey, maybe I've always liked Mexico, so now I want to go into Mexico. That opens up another can of options. And so what we do is really sit down with them and take a lot of the conversations I've had with clients over the years and experience I've had with clients over the years, and kind of say, here's what I see happening. What's going on in your head, and how would this help you get from point A to point B? Because you want to get to there. But literally, it can take 5-6 years to go find that house because you just can't decide what you want.
Now, have you found, Jim, as you're doing that, when people realize that these constraints that they used to have, that are now somewhat freedoms, and you walk them through that, does that help expedite? I mean, I would imagine that the stress is lifted off, that I'm not the only one that has a hard time making a decision when I don't have all these outside factors, right? Is there some kind of maybe counsel that you'd give to them, like, it's okay to feel this way, and here's the steps that we take? Like, do you walk through like stories of other clients you've worked with? Well, I have some clients that did this, and I would imagine that just based on your 33 years of experience, that you almost have a whole library of people that have done different things that you can pull from to say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Is that the case? It seems like it would be.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I like to inform my clients is that most people end up thinking they're going to downsize, and they end up just resizing. You know, if you're in a $800,000 house, you buy an $800,000 house. It's just now a ranch, or it's a condo or something, or it's 1.2. And a lot of people upsize. They sold their 1.2 to go downsize, and now they're at 1.6, but it's exactly what they want. So the biggest thing, I've had a client and a couple come to mind. One actually bought the house they wanted to downsize into, and then before they moved in, I mean, we had gone in and done work on the property and bought some, certain things for that house, and then decided we don't want to move. And we ended up selling the house before they even moved in, which was a lot of trauma and angst for them as they went through that. But fortunately, the market was really well, and they did okay. Lost a little bit of money, but not as bad as they would have. But and then I have other clients who they were so into, we got to downsize, that within 2 years they're calling me up and say the house is too small. We don't need a condo. We need a backyard. And so they got so caught into this one part of the life that at the end of the day, they're like, I retired, and this is not the life I want to have. I want to enjoy my retirement. It's not in this small townhome. I need a little bit bigger house. And so again, we moved, and fortunately the market had done well. And so they were able to do well. And so it really is being a consultant with them to say, what really is it that you want to do? And let's dive deep into this. And it's not just buying the 4-bedroom home because you got 3 kids and it's in the school district and it happens to be available before August. It's, what do you want to spend your golden years in, and how does that look? And is there other properties that need to be involved in this picture for you? Is it just this one house, or are we budgeting for, a second or third home somewhere?
I'll bet in many cases, people have never been asked that question, right? Like, what do you want your retirement years to look like, right? Outside of maybe the advisors on this call, few people go around asking people those kinds of questions. And it's probably a bit of a relief to have people say, like, never really thought of it that way. I've been thinking through the lens of what's good for my family, what's good for my kids, what's good for all these things. And now they're not as dependent on that. So let's go to Phil. Phil, you've obviously worked on many of those same clients. And as Jim's helping consult them and advise them through that scenario of all the different options that could be, I've found that many people put getting a home mortgage into a very specific box, and so they go shopping just for rates, right? Whereas I think what they miss when they look at the world that way is they miss a guy like you who's been at this for 30 plus years and all the different alternative ways to get that life that they want, right? They might be looking through the lens of, okay, I guess we're going to buy a house over here, maybe buy it, and we need this much money. But now you come to the table and say, hey, I've got I've got path A, B, or C to get us to that outcome, right? Talk us through kind of your experience in that, and that how you help people who are, again, preparing for retirement at that phase, some of the different options that you've proposed to them that maybe some people haven't thought of before.
Sure. But Jim's so right. I mean, basically, people need to know what they want first so that we can actually help them get there. There's lots of ways to structure stuff if we know. I do loans in 50 states, so I have people going everywhere. And but really, for instance, here's an example. You got somebody who isn't retiring as well as they would like, but they have a big house and they're like, okay, I want to sell my house. I'm going to get some money out of it. But, I want that house on the golf course, a smaller place on the golf course, but it's going to cost about the same amount, as Jim, kind of said. And, you could go and put your equity down and do a reverse mortgage in a case like that. All of a sudden you have the same quality on a purchase on a reverse mortgage that you can have that big house that you always wanted on the golf course as a retirement home. And people don't realize these types of things. This is important that they have that option, so they can go and create a life for themselves that they deserve after working so hard all of their life. And I really am excited about helping people find that right path, because then they can really enjoy retirement and not just suffer through. You know, I've seen people who just like, well, I'm going to have to move to Kentucky and buy a $200,000 house because that's all I got. And I'm like, well, have you thought about this? You know, how about something different? And sometimes they listen to you, sometimes they don't, but it's just up to them on what they really want. And that's what I do, is really look at them. And like we were talking about earlier, you know, the fingerprint. Everybody's a fingerprint. We got to have this one individual thing for that person. How does that fit? How does that, all the little things with all these advisors here, how do we put that all together and create a solution for their lives so they can have the fullest and highest quality of life possible in their retirement? A lot of people think, you know, they don't know how to retire. They're just like, okay, I'm here. What do I do now? I guess this is what I always thought would happen, but they never really give it a lot of thought on what that's going to look like. And there's a lot more options there than they think. So I just want people to keep their options open and not forget to dream in this period of time. They can have a great retirement for most people. I mean, it just, especially with the knowledge base that we have in this call.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to just add in, is that when you try and go cheap and it's like, well, I think we can do this online, or, you know, we can do it this way. You miss out on, like I said before, the decades of experience of people who have helped countless people do it in very customized ways to their needs. And I would just encourage people that the value that you get from working with real advisors who, number one, want what Phil just described. I want you to dream. I want you to have a great retirement, right? Not just a cookie cutter, one size fits all. Here's what you do. Here's your loan. Thank you very much. But no, tell me what you really want out of these years, and let's custom create something together with your other advisors, right? That really works for you, that really gets you to what you want. Like, it's so uncommon to have that kind of support group around you that you guys are, you know, creating for people. So pretty cool. Let's go to Anson. Anson, I know that they're obviously insurance, at least in years past, and maybe through my naive mind, has been like, oh yeah, it's kind of like an afterthought of, oh yeah, okay, we've got to get an insurance on a property. And maybe it's because certain things in you know, different you know, events and calamities, or whatever you want to call them, have caused kind of a stir in insurance in certain parts of the country. All of a sudden, insurance isn't just an afterthought, but it's something that really needs to be thought about in advance, right? Talk us through a little bit to this same audience, right, that's preparing for retirement. And what do you do to help them be sure that it's not an afterthought and that they take it into consideration, and maybe even some of the risk factors if they don't really plan ahead for insurance?
Yeah, great question. I'll throw that in the bucket of basically financial risk management. So you get towards retirement, and we talked about the second home. I grew up in Indiana, small town, beautiful Parker City town of 1,300 people. And as Phil just said, the value or the cost of property there is quite different than where I live in Colorado now. And so as people begin looking at the second or third home, they have to begin thinking about, first of all, the cost difference, but then the insurance cost difference. And the cost of a homeowner's policy in Colorado on top of a mountain is far different than something in the valley of, say, Kansas. The other thing, in talking about moving to or buying property in Mexico or Guatemala or some other foreign nation, the insurance is a little bit different. And so as I get calls from clients saying, Anson, I'm looking at buying a home in Montana. Okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the area. And is there a fire risk there that might increase that premium? And so different areas have different insurance costs. If you get something to the coast right now, Florida, for example, it is very, very, very expensive to buy a home in Florida, but then the insurance sometimes can be cost prohibitive. And the last thing I'll say is a lot of retirees, as Jim said, want to look at a condominium. And the one thing about a condominium is, yes, they're lower cost, but they have these things called HOA fees. And a lot of times when you get into that situation, there can be assessments or increases in those HOA fees that were unplanned for retirement and can really kind of push you back. And so those are all the things we try to talk to our clients about when buying that second or third property.
Great insight, Anson, that, I think fewer people, at least in years past, really considered the geographic impact of where they're living and how that could make housing what it appears through a little online calculator. If we can afford that, but when you don't bring in insurance, oftentimes they'll use, just a percentage that's pretty standard across the country of, this is how much insurance is going to cost, but it's not like that anymore, it appears. And maybe again, that's just me being around, more professionals like you that are opening my eyes to it, that you actually need to take that into consideration. And great points as well on the condos is that you can have a even be on a fixed income or an income that you've planned for, and all of a sudden you get a surprise that has nothing to do with what you did, right? There was some assessment that came in. So, all right, let's go to Jay. Jay, obviously your background in helping people manage their wealth, grow their wealth, is deep, and oftentimes kind of the financial advisor is seen as kind of the center of all things financial, to where you're interacting with these other professionals. So I think you're kind of the, a great one for us to loop in here towards the end to really say, okay, what else are we missing that we haven't brought up in this conversation of, again, with this demographic of people that are, maybe newly retired and they're trying to make a decision as to what life's going to look like. There's some indecisiveness about, should it look like this, or this? What advice do you give clients that really many people don't get, right? That really helps them to navigate some things that they otherwise might get blindsided by.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I'll kind of extend the common theme that I've heard of really customizing and tailoring solutions for clients' specific needs. And I think that's what we all do as trusted advisors that you can't get online. You just can't. So it's the relationships and it's the understanding of clients of what they really are trying to accomplish. And it's as easy as a simple conversation. What do you want retirement to look like? And for everyone, that's a different answer. And I have a lot of clients come to me and say, how much do we need to retire? And I tell them there's so many variables. There's so many moving parts to that question. The old rule of thumb was if you have $2 million, it's game over, you're fine, you're gonna have a comfortable retirement. Yes, maybe, but maybe not, depending on your lifestyle. So what we see with retirees is your spending goes up significantly in the first 3 to 4 years. You're traveling, you're visiting grandkids, you're doing all the things that you wanted to do, just couldn't do during your working years. And now both spouses have the ability to get up and go and do things. And health is a key component to that. So those are the years in which you are healthy and you're able to go on a cruise, you're able to go trek the Himalayas, you can do all these things, have a great golf trip, do anything. Then we see their spending plateaus for the majority of the rest of their retirement. So after 3, 4, 5 years, you've done all the things you wanted to do, all the big ticket items, all the bucket list, you knocked it all off. And then now you're just existing, just kind of surviving, not necessarily thriving, but getting by. And then we see your cost needs go up exponentially in the later years of retirement. Typically, it's due to health. It's the long-term care needs. It's the passing of one spouse and you're losing their income, whether it's a pension or Social Security. Those are all things you need to account for. So there is no one size fits all answer to that question is how much do you need? It all depends on what kind of lifestyle you want to live. And that's where I think we work as a trusted advisors, we work with a team. So it's not just me managing the assets. It's, hey, are you in the right type of home longer term health wise? Are there stairs, or do you need to downsize to a ranch and something that's easier, maybe a lock and leave if you have 2 homes or investment properties? And then insurance is another key component to that as well, whether it be home and auto, health, long-term care, life insurance. There's so many forms of insurance, and insurance plays a significant role in everyone's lives. And again, when you're trying to finance things and leverage assets, you need someone like Phil. And so it's building a team around you. And you mentioned not everyone has the ability or the finance or the net worth to justify a family office, but you can create your own one around you and find great referrals from existing friends and coworkers who, I need a CPA, I need a realtor, I need whatever it is. And having that team and then relying on that team, and Anson mentioned earlier, is a trust factor. And so weed those out and try to find the right ones who are a good fit for you and your family. And then you lean on those, and it's a team around you.
I don't think anybody's ever walked me through how expenses vary during retirement. I think I just assumed they would kind of be somewhat level, but the way you laid that out was really interesting. Is the spending is high and then levels out and then it really goes up. What strategies should people to prepare for that, right? Because obviously, and again, everybody's going to be different as far as how lavish the trips are up front and how severe the medical needs are at the end, right? So don't expect anything completely, one size fits all for everybody. But what have you found are some key strategies to help people to navigate the income or needs during retirement? Are there certain things that they can be doing now besides just saving more money or setting more money aside? Is there any advice or tools that you give to people, vehicles that you put them in that help them to feel comfortable and confident and actually enjoy retirement instead of fearing, am I going to outlive this money?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the key is coming up with an actual plan, because again, it's different for everyone. But what you can do proactively, the younger you start investing, again, every client I've never had a client come into my office and say, I'm so bummed we started saving in our 401k so early. What were we thinking back in our 20s? So everyone wishes they did start earlier. But the thing that you can do, and it's never too late to start this concept, is what's called tax diversification. So most people think, I just need to save as much money. Well, what buckets are you saving money in? If you're putting money into a traditional 401k, that's all pre-tax dollars. It's great when you put that money in, but if you have $1 million in a 401k and you retire, you only have $700,000 in there. 30% of that's going to Uncle Sam in taxes. And so by having different buckets, there's a tax-free bucket, which is a Roth IRA, 529 plan for your kids or your grandkids, cash value life insurance. All after-tax dollars that you put in grows, but then you pull that money out completely tax-free down the road. And then there's just regular taxable accounts. So you have a joint brokerage account that you are able to access whenever you want to, and you're just going to pay capital gains taxes on that amount. So the key, and what helps me on the tail end planning for a client, is if we have diversification, we have 3 different buckets to pull money from, we can keep you in the lowest possible tax bracket, but still live a very comfortable retirement. But you can't do that at the 11th hour. It has to be something that's planned accordingly, and make sure you have enough in all of those so that you're not hit with a huge tax bill or a large assessment that you have on the condo or whatever, that you can absorb those in a very tax efficient manner.
Yeah, it's something that I'm sure not a lot of people think about. Is number one, the need to start preparing early, right? It's not an 11th hour thing as you described, but also to have those 3 buckets that keep the income from an IRS standpoint low, but still give you all the needs, like take care of all the needs that you have. Any other comments or questions on that before we move on to another topic? I'm sure we're all learning from each other. I know I'm learning from all of you. Does anybody want to add to anything that's been said so far, or deeper?
Let me jump in on the long-term care. So long-term care should be bought as early as possible. It's very important. And there's a lot of different types of long-term care insurance. The product that my wife and I use is a life insurance product that basically even if you don't use it, because maybe you don't need assisted living and you live to 92 and you die in your home, right? Well, there are products that will pay for long-term care, but then if they're not used, then you still have the proceeds for life insurance. So long-term care, if you're 25 and listening to this, or 30 and listening to this, look at it now. And if you're 50 and have not looked at it, it's now time to look at that product. And we just don't know, where healthcare is going as you get in your later years. So
fascinating. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought about that, Anson, to start as early as you just described. But I do know with life insurance, it's obviously gets more expensive the longer you wait. And you know, that makes sense that long-term care would be the same. Jim and Phil, anything you guys want to add to this conversation before we move on to another topic?
Yeah, I was kind of hit a little bit on what everybody said here, because, you know, like for example, Anson, a perfect example on insurance, what's going on in real estate right now. And I don't think Anson told me this, but I heard from another broker. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but Colorado is the most expensive insurance in the country that's not on an ocean. So because of the fires and the large amount of hail we have. And it's gotten to the point where two things are happening with the insurance side here. One is going to the point you had on HOAs. The cost these HOAs are having to pay to cover their insurance are like tripling if they can't even find it. So a plan that used to be 600,000 might be 2 million when they come in to get their new insurance plan. And that cost is going right through the HOA into your dues. So that's going on. In addition, if you're with a small carrier or one-man carrier that's, say, you know, a State Farm, Allstate, Farmers, they might just decided that in this area, we have too many people in this area that we wouldn't want to cover anybody else anymore. So I just had a house, a young couple bought their first house, starter home in a very suburban, brand new suburban area, new construction around it here in Douglas County, and they couldn't get insurance. I had to send them to Anson so because they're a broker, they could go out and broker this insurance out. So insurance is a really big key here. And that also throws in with Jay, and what he's doing is that, you know, because he when he takes his clients, he is looking at them on a broad stroke. And so when we're looking at how we're going to finance a house with Phil, and you look at Jay and how they're doing what they're doing there, there's a lot of options that you can do going and saying, do we maybe it makes sense to get a bigger loan, or maybe it makes sense to come up with more cash, and then by working with your financial advisor and your lender, working together, instead of one just saying, here's my opinion from a financial advisor point, might be totally different what the opinion the lender saying, no, you should get the biggest loan you want. The lender saying, the financial advisor saying, no, you know, really for you right now, this blend makes more sense. So if they're talking to each other while you're getting your loan, you're going to have a better chance of having the right product than you are if you just talk to one or the other. And that's where having, you know, 100 years of experience in this panel is really going to make the home buying and retirement experience and getting insurance much different than just going out and saying, I'm going to go buy a house with Jim, and I'm going to call my insurance guy who's random, knows nothing about this, is going to go do the insurance. My friend just referred me a lender over here, and oh, by the way, I have a Charles Schwab account somewhere, and I know I have money in there, and I hope it's enough. That's the difference that you get. And going back to what we said is having, you know, a group of people that you would normally find in ultra wealthy families. If you have a group like this, you really do get that same thing at a discount.
Yeah, no doubt. I think, you know, what you described there, I do believe that's the future of what consumers need to be looking for, is not just great advisors, but great collaborative advisors. Because I've talked to a number of professionals, or I should say consumers, and I've felt this way before as well, is that anytime you talk to just one professional, you get one perspective. But when you bring them together, and, you know, for all the not so good things that came out of COVID, I think the one good thing is that video conferencing is pretty universal now amongst all age demographics. We're all pretty comfortable being in this environment. And normally getting somebody to drive across town from what you might be feeling as a consumer is just kind of an average to small player. Then, you know, getting those two professionals to hop on a quick Zoom call and talk for 15 minutes to develop this strategy. If you don't have professionals that are willing to do that, you probably need to relook and kind of reevaluate your loyalties, because I know this group is open to that, right? They do enough business that they're willing. They don't have commission breath. They're not trying to just get everything that serves them. They're really looking to say, what's in the best interest of you, the client, and let's look at it from different angles, and let's work together as a collaborative professional team to help this particular household get the life that they want, which is, I can tell you how comforting that is, right? As a consumer, to have that kind of experience. It's unique and it's uncommon, and it puts you in having an uncommon outcome. So I love that you highlighted that, Jim. I was feeling the same way as I heard you guys speaking and building off of each other's ideas. Like, how would it be to have a group like this really surrounding you? So I love it. Um, let's move on to another demographic here. And I think that you've kind of described this, Jim, as and Jay, you did as well, is that there's a group that right after they get retired, it's like, woohoo, let's go, let's do all the things that we wanted to do, right? And now all of a sudden, that's the go-go stage, which I think is what you called it, Jim, earlier on. And then there's the no-go stage, right? Which is you're really coming down to the end. You don't have the health or the energy to go do what you did before. And whether you're listening to this and you're in that phase, or you're maybe the child of somebody who's going through that phase and you're having to start to step in to make some of those decisions. And it's really the assisted kind of living stage potentially, or at least you're on the cusp of that. I think there's a whole other conversation that needs to happen. So let's start maybe with you, Jay, this time, if you wouldn't mind. What are some things that people maybe need to consider at that stage of life, right? Where they've got a shorter lifespan ahead of them, of course, and they're trying to be sure that they have enough, but not also leave kind of a mess for their family by not having a conversation as what happens with what is left, right? Kind of what's some of your best advice to maybe kids of, or maybe that adult who's kind of entering that phase?
Yeah, no, very good question. We see it all the time. And the key is being proactive. So don't wait till dementia kicks in to a point where then you can't put things in place, because legally you can't do it. So it kind of goes back to the whole savings idiom. It's never too early to start. So once I'd say comfortably in your 50s, entering your early 60s, you need to have an estate plan put in place. And that's just another resource, a collaborative resource, just like all of the advisors here, where that's another person to have on your team, is a good estate attorney. And it's not necessarily there's all the assets of who's going to get what and what do you want. And if you have a child who's not going to respond as well as another child to receiving a big lump sum of cash in the next few years for whatever reason, you want to have those controls in place, and a trust can do that. You can spell that out specifically. But the key is having someone you trust and you can identify while you are still mentally able to make a sound decision of who's going to make these decisions on. Again, there's the the wealth care piece, but there's also the healthcare piece of, at that point in time when I'm not able to take care of myself, what do I want that to look like? And so having those conversations early on, how long do you want to do not resuscitate? What do you want? Do you want, again, palliative care? There's all those decisions that you can make. So having that healthcare directive is a really important one, and who you want to make those decisions. So typically with every client, there's always one favorite child. I have 4 kids. I love them all equally, but there's always one child who every couple has, who they say, this is the person, this is the one I want making these decisions. And getting them in a formal role, whether it's a power of attorney, whether it's financial or durable power of attorney, getting them into the picture early on is very important. And also giving them insight and visibility to what your situation is critical. There's so many times I've had clients come in, they have no clue what kind of assets their parents own. Sometimes it's way more, sometimes it's way less. But having those conversations early on, so that child, that decision maker, knows how to be the quarterback, as opposed to everyone blindly coming into this. Someone passes and they come to me with a death certificate. What do we do? And there's no plan in place. It can go to probate, which can take 18 months. It can be messy with kids saying, oh, dad promised me the cabin. Mom promised me this. And it gets very messy and very painful. And that's not what either one of us want on the back end of our estate being settled. So just being proactive.
Yeah, I mean, what a travesty, really, to work so hard throughout your life to leave some assets for your children and to bring the family together, right? Maybe you buy a cabin like you described there to be able to bring the family together, and that ends up being what tears the family apart, right? So I think anybody that's listening here, your sage advice of like, start early, get it not just vocalized, but get it into a trust, get it very specifically identified as to what happens here, knowing the personalities of your children and kind of those heirs, whether it be charities or others, to be able to really set everyone up for success, to where this wealth that you work so hard to create actually blesses the family, as opposed to turns it into a negative situation. That's good advice. Anson, what would you add to that?
Yeah, a little bit of a story here. So a few years ago, a good friend of mine, Paul Hansen, he and I were talking, and his father was end of life. And he said, have you talked to your father about this? And I said, no, I said, my dad's a very proud man. I said, I would be embarrassed to approach him. And he said, well, last week I sat down with my father and he went blow by blow through his book. He had a book and it said exactly where every account was, what he owned, what he wanted to do with that. And he said, you need to talk to your father about it. And so I felt a little bit uneasy about it. Again, I love my father. My father loves me, but it's a tough conversation to have. This message is to anybody 40 to 55 years old. If you have not sat down with your parents and had that conversation, it's very, very important to do that. But I didn't do that. Here's what I did. I had just got my wife and I estate planning done. I've got a great estate planning attorney. I called my attorney and I said, I want you to take care of my father's estate. I want you to talk to him. I talked to my father. I said, look, I'm not going to be a part of this. I want you to work with Paul and get your book taken care of. So God forbid when you pass, my sister and I know exactly what you want to have happen. And I have a book upstairs right now, big green binder that my dad and Paul put together that says exactly what he wants to have happen. So that piece is so important. My sister and I will get along swimmingly after my parents passed because everything's been set. And so that, pretty much adding on to what Jay said, that is so key and critical to those people that are 40, 55, 60 years old to make sure that your parents do have that plan.
Great advice. What a great story. Phil, I'm sure you've heard stories similar to that of both things that were prepared and went well and those that didn't. From your vantage point of the mortgage, probably fewer people are acquiring assets at that point, but maybe they're simplifying, selling bigger things and buying smaller ones. What insight would you have from the mortgage space about for that demographic of people, whether it be those that are actually headed into that kind of no-go phase of more assisted living, or for their kids that are entering into that phase? Any insight you have for us would be interesting to hear.
Sure. Extended care is very expensive. My mother was in extended care for quite a while, and we decided we needed to sell her house, right? And so we sold her house, and I really kicked myself after that because we really should have kept that house and probably rented it to offset the long-term expenses that were coming along. Not to mention the house, appreciated tremendously in the next 7 to 10 years that she was going through extended care, and it would have paid all of her benefits, right? So I guess I'm just taking a little bit of a twist there is, real estate, you should be really cautious when you're making good decisions on what you're doing. Maybe it's good to go sell that big house and have a couple rentals or something or whatever to help you offset that expense of a long-term care also. I mean, I don't come from the same background as Jay and Anson on that type of stuff and don't sell those types of products, which are great and people need to have them and they need to plan. But don't forget the real estate. It can be a really good asset to have in that portfolio at the same time.
Absolutely. Love it. Great insight. Jim, let's hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, and I'm at that point where I'm dealing with this quite a bit with my clients, and I went through it with my mom and dad already. And what I see the biggest thing, and it kind of goes back to what Jay and everybody's been saying here, is it's the planning aspect of this. What generally happens is, I see this all the time. People will be like 85 and they've been in their house for 50 years, and of course it hasn't been updated, and maybe the kids aren't here. They live in another state. They come back and visit grandma as often as they can. But now it's time for grandma to go to assisted living. And of course, we don't want to do it here because now we want to put back in the other state that they're in. So now I've got to go move grandma across the country at 85. She has no friends there because she's never spent anything. So her church group and all the things that she was in here, all her support system, she goes away. So she doesn't see that anymore. And now you have this this dated house that you're saying, and now I got to dispose of this. And, she wasn't keeping it as clean and maybe has a little more clutter than you would have in there. And how am I going to do all this? So you come to, I get called in on this. I'm like, well, probably the best thing to do at this point is just to have an investor kind of come in and give you a fair market value, let them fix it up and sell it. And then we got to go figure out how to get rid of all these lifelong things that we've collected through the years. And it's some things need to go away, but some things would have been great to keep if we had time to go figure out what to do with all these things. But now there's too much going on in our life. We're getting grandma moved across here. She's in assisted living here. She's moving to assisted living there. And we just, we'll take a few things and maybe have an estate sale, which usually doesn't accomplish much because most of the people don't want anything that's in the estate sale. And then they call me up and I get an investor and a big dumpster rolls in and everything gets pulled out of the house. And this investor turns around and makes, $100,000 or 150,000 or whatever it is on that house. Had you done some pre-planning on this and had this done maybe 10 years before when grandma was a little better, she could have moved back to where you are and gone into, whatever she needed from a living standpoint, hooked up with that church group and hooked up with those connections and met some friends there. You would have had time to go through and get all the things out of the house. And then you could have fixed it up at your timetable and you could have sold it. And her estate would have made the $150,000. But you just get into this panic that's supposed to happen. So again, all this comes down into planning and working with people that have been through this. And you bring up the commission breath because it does come down a lot of times to, you just happen to, randomly find some real estate agent or some person that just wants to get the deal done and isn't giving you the best advice that you needed at that point in time because they're just trying to get a quick deal done because you're just a transaction to them. Most of my business is relationship business. And so I'm not only trying to help grandma here, but I'm trying to help their child, who's my friend who referred me into this, to make sure we're getting it done in the best manner forms. So, but again, it comes down to don't wait till, the very end to make these decisions, do them much earlier.
It reminds me of a story that we uncovered recently in the reverse mortgage space. Now, Phil, do you do reverse mortgages or you have a close partner who you refer those to?
I have someone I would refer them to. I don't actually do them, but
yeah, they're pretty powerful, aren't they? The concept was, and I was reminded of this when you were talking, Jim, is that this gentleman, he did learn about some of these more maybe lesser known ways of dealing with this, with these types of situations. And he said because of that particular product, he was able to help his dad to move down from Spokane, Washington, down outside of Vancouver, Washington, which would have been, 5 to 6 hour probably trip for him to drive to. And his dad wouldn't have been able to live on his own independently because he would have been too far away. But because he was able to leverage a tool that, again, a common professional, right, a common loan officer wouldn't have necessarily known about, nor had the patience to describe to them, right? They, the father would have been moved into a situation that wouldn't have been ideal for him. But because he did have a good advisor around him, like you guys, he was able to, have his dad purchase a home just down the street, and he was able to live independently until the end of his life. And it was a great story, right? But all of that happens because there were good advisors around them, and they started early, right? They started early thinking about these things. Didn't get to a point to where dad didn't understand what was going on, and obviously resisted the change, and all of a sudden it's a different story, and you aren't able to actually to help him really kind of live comfortably. So, any other questions before we move on to maybe our last topic that we'll wrap up with? Is there any other kind of final comments or ahas or thoughts that you guys had on this particular topic of helping that no-go group that maybe we didn't quite cover?
I wanted to introduce my dog, Parker Van Halen, who barked a couple times. Sorry about that, but that just, if you heard her, that's her name. She's beautiful. I love her. I apologize.
I didn't know that's that's what that was, but that's the coolest name I've ever heard on a dog. So I like it. Thanks for the introduction. Okay, let's go to the last topic. And I think this one is an interesting one for anybody listening, because you either are at a younger phase of life or you have people in your life who are younger. And I think each of us would probably go back to say, if I were younger, I would have done this differently, right? And it's kind of that, not the coulda, woulda, shoulda, because that's never a very healthy place to live from. But if I ever get the chance to kind of speak wisdom into a younger person, I'm going to tell them to do this so that they're more prepared for retirement, right? I think we all recognize that starting early is always the best, kind of the best rule when it comes to being prepared. But I'd love to hear each of you, your advice, if you were to give advice to a younger person who wants to be prepared for retirement, and retirement maybe 30, 40 years out in the future. What advice would you give to them on what they could start doing now to be prepared for retirement and probably ongoing uncertain times? Jim, let's start with you.
And I think everybody here would agree, if they've ever looked at the house that they first bought, that they sold to buy their second house, that they wish they still owned that house free and clear today, which you would have owned it free and clear today. So my advice would be, and this ties into what Jay was saying earlier too, don't forget that real estate is one of those buckets that your financial advisor is going to want to use based on where you are. And there's some really big tax advantages that you can do and play with as you get older. If you have a handful of properties, and Phil shared that with his mother-in-law, but if you had some real estate property that was free and clear 30 years from now, that was, I call it wake-up money, that every month there's a check that comes in the mail. Now it's Zillow or whatever, but there's some money showing up electronically, probably somewhere into your account, that is cash flowing for you. That, again, Jay's gonna be able to sit there and look at that and say, what do we want to do with that? From a financial standpoint, Phil can look at it and say, hey, this might be something that we need you want some cash on. I can go do a loan for you on this rental property that maybe let you leverage another rental property, so you don't come up with any more cash to buy this other property you want. And then, of course, insuring all these properties in the right manner. So real estate as a long-term investment. I mean, my kids are buying their houses. I'm like, you're not selling any of these houses. You're going to go figure out how to buy your next house without selling this house. And then we'll figure out down the road how we're going to dispose of them in a good tax managed way.
Well, I just want to point out the fact that Jim makes money when people sell houses, and to have somebody who is in his business who says don't sell the house, that just tells you how good he is and why he's built a business based off relationships, is because he speaks what's in the best interest of his clients, not what's always in his best interest. So thanks for sharing that, Jim. That was a great object lesson on why people trust you so much. So yeah, I have a house that I paid $135,000 for. That's probably worth $300,000 now. That's no longer in my name. And I'm still sad about that. And I think when I sold it, I netted maybe $6,000, and that seemed like a lot of money at the time. I was excited, but looking back, I'm like, oh, what was I thinking? So anyway, yes, I would put an exclamation point behind that one. Is that buy and hold can be a great strategy, whenever you can. So all right, Phil, let's hear your sage advice for the younger generation.
Well, I wish I would have bought a lot more insurance when I was younger, when I could afford it. Right now, it's expensive. So remember that for sure. You got to start early, and you got to start planning early on that type of thing. And then I totally agree with Jim. I wish I would have never sold any property that I owned. I mean, you look at the valuation. It was just, now it's just ridiculous. And I just want to do a quick example on a reverse mortgage. People go, well, my principal balance is getting bigger every month. How does that help me? And I'm going, well, yeah, but look at the appreciation you're getting on that property still. So, Colorado on average goes up 5% per year. If you look at it historically, it's 5%. So even on a $500,000 house, you're going up $25,000 a year in appreciation. And so if you're getting a little bit of deferred interest put on your loan, think about that. Your appreciation could be paying for it, or at least a large part of it. So I think people don't think about those types of things. So I really think the appreciation that you get is just, it can be quite an offset to really, investing in real estate is just so important. So everybody has to remember that.
Yeah. Great advice, Phil. I love it. Great example. Anson, let's hear from you again. Advice for the younger generation. And again, the guy who just went before you talked about how important your industry is, right? Like, don't overlook the need to get insurance, especially when you're young. So, yeah, what else would you add to that?
Yeah, I think it's so important, and thank you, Phil. Yes, if you're a younger person, please, by all means, look at as much as you can from a life insurance, long-term care. But I think it's so important to find a trusted advisor. And not just a trusted advisor, but just like we're doing here. You got four people that can work together to plan. And so insurance is an afterthought for most people. They don't spend any time looking at it. And let me give you an example of what a young person might want to look at right now. It's very specific. Boulder, Colorado, 3 years ago, we had a few fires and people lost their homes. And a lot of people could not rebuild their homes because they had not looked at the coverage A amount, the amount of coverage they had on their dwelling. But there's another coverage they need to look at called ordinance or law. Boulder, Colorado is a place that has a lot of ordinances, a lot of laws that change. And I think most communities today have that. And so if I'm a young person, there's two things I want to do from a homeowner's insurance standpoint. I want to call my provider. First of all, make sure I love my provider. If you don't love your provider, find somebody you love. It's very important to have an insurance agent that knows you. You can call 24/7. But look at your amount of coverage on your dwelling and then ask about ordinance or law. It's not that expensive, but it's going to allow you to rebuild your home and build it up to code what your local community has now passed after a major fire, major tornado, major hurricane. So tip of the day.
I've actually never heard of that, Anson. I didn't know that was a thing, ordinance or code. So great conversation for everybody to have with their insurance agent if they love them. And if they don't, you should call Anson. I'll just put that plug in for him. All right, Jay, bring us home, my friend. Best advice you could give to the younger generation that wants to be prepared early and, has that benefit of the years and years of compounding interest that probably we all wish we had a little more of, but let's hear your perspective. What advice would you?
Yeah, you actually stole one of my lines, Justin. So my words of wisdom would be start early and stay disciplined. It's critical to I see so many, and we'll call them kids these days, but they are that they get their first job, and your lifestyle has a direct correlation to your income. So you're making pretty good money, you get a promotion, and then you start spending a little more money, you get a little nicer car, take nicer vacations. But if you can live within your means of what you earned in your first job, and then every subsequent promotion, raise, move that you do professionally, you still live off of that amount, and then you save the rest, and you put that, and you be proactive. You get insurance early while you're young and it's affordable. An example is when I got a few years under my belt, I bought a house. I saved up enough to come up with a down payment. I bought a house. All my buddies lived in the house. Their rent paid my mortgage. To Jim's point, I wish I still owned that house. I truly did. But if you can get accustomed to a certain lifestyle with the long-term vision that eventually I might have multiple houses. I've got a ton of wealth built up that I can buy a business. I can do whatever it is I want to do. But staying disciplined is the key. And it's so hard to stay that course when everything around us, media, friends, and you got to keep up with the Joneses. You think, oh wow, maybe I don't need my Passat anymore. Maybe I get an Audi, I get whatever. But if you can stay disciplined, just knowing that short-term sacrifice can have a huge impact down the road. To your point, Albert Einstein once said the greatest force on earth is compounding interest. So eventually, if you can be earning interest on your interest, it's just exponential over time. And if you can have a investment real estate, whether it's you start off as your primary residence and then parlay that into something else, but still keep that, eventually that mortgage is paid off. Then that income is free and clear. And then when you are retired, that's a whole nother bucket that we can rely on. $2,500 coming in each month. It's kind of like an annuity or a pension. And it's just a good diversifier. I'm a big fan of not putting all your eggs in one basket. So if you have real estate, you have traditional investments, you have equity in a business or your house, good things happen on the tail end.
Yeah, I love it, Jay. Great stuff. And what a way to kind of sum up kind of all the value in this meeting, right? These what Anson said and what all of you said is just the power of having good advisors around you who not only are best of class, but are collaborative in nature. To have this kind of expertise has been a treat for me, for sure. And I'm sure for all those that, that will consume this after the fact. And then for those who are wise enough to say, I need an upgrade on my advisors, I need to go find this group, because I feel like I'm going to be light years ahead of where I would be otherwise, working with professionals who only look at the world and work from a silo. I need a group that's super collaborative like this. So I want to thank each of you for contributing so much to those again that will consume this. And let's put in fact, how about this? We'll be sure to put the contact information of these professionals. Should you be watching this, I have that contact info. We'll put it in all the places where this is streamed. And then we'll be sure. And actually, after the fact, we'll also have it put across the screen to where everybody can capture your contact info and reach out from there. So we'll kind of conclude on that. Thank you all for that. And I'm going to ask our presenters to stay just a minute here. And I want to capture just kind of some, if you will, kind of a testimonial, if you will, or just kind of a quick summary of kind of your experience tonight that we'll use on kind of the front end of this video to really help people to see why they should watch the whole thing, because there was so much value here tonight. So let me do this. Let me put I'm going to spotlight Jim. We'll just go through kind of each of you. Jim, if you just share kind of your experience after having sat around the table with these other advisors, explain to anybody that's watching or that is contemplating watching this recording, why they should listen, kind of your excitement about what you experienced tonight.
Well, I've known everybody on this panel for decades, so and have been they've been clients and friends of mine for years. But the thing that's amazing, and I cross paths. I mean, we all know there's some things about the financial advisors, we all know insurance, we all know realtors, we all know lenders. But the things that I've been in this for 32 years, and the things that I picked up from what they were saying that I had no clue about, and these are people I see all the time. And we're usually going out, we go play golf, or we're going to do something, we're talking about our clients, something like that. But that the amount of knowledge that this group has is phenomenal, and I just kind of know I can refer them with confidence. But I'm not getting the nuggets as much as that client that I'm referring them to. So I really appreciated some of the things they were saying that was really helpful to me by just getting to know them even better tonight.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, very good. Let's go to Phil Mayer. Phil, let me spotlight you here for just a sec. Just same thing. Just would love to hear just kind of your thoughts on our time together tonight.
Well, you can't pay, the advice that was given and the people's knowledge in this group is so amazing. I mean, it really is. And, I've known, Jim for a long time, and what a great real estate agent. And you need a really good real estate agent to help you make money and to plan for the future. I mean, there's people who don't think about those things when they're putting together transactions. In the same way with Anson and the same thing with Jay, they are looking at those pieces in a way we can't even understand. And they know the details. And that's why we have advisors, because we can't know all they know. It's just too much. And so I really appreciate great advisors in my life. And I pay extra for them because they're worth it. It just is. I mean, it's like, do you want the Mercedes advice or do you want the VW advice? I don't know, but that's just how I feel. And I believe all of these guys are, Ferrari advisors. Okay. So thanks.
I love it. I love it. Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I will second that. It's been a treat tonight. All right, let's do Anson. Let's hear your thoughts on tonight.
I've had the fortune of my life to buy a couple homes from Jim Romano, best real estate in the nation. Phil handled a mortgage for us. Excellent. Just that's dicey sometimes. He was fantastic, and happy to say that Jay is managing my wife and I's retirement. So I've got a lot of faith in this panel. And yeah, the wisdom they have, I lean on them. I trust them implicitly. And again, I think it goes back to, if you are not in a position where you love your wealth advisor, your realtor, your mortgage broker, your insurance person, talk to somebody that can connect with you. And I'm not for everybody, and neither is everybody on this call, but we are for some people. And if you resonate with how we speak and some of the knowledge that we have, all of us, I'm sure, would love to sit down and have a conversation. And that's where it starts, is just have a conversation, find out what's important, and go from there.
Love it, Anson. Pretty cool. All right, Jay, let me spotlight you for a sec. All right, let's hear your kind of thoughts on your experience tonight.
Yeah, I think it's just critical for everyone out there listening to this to build a team of trusted advisors. I think we mentioned, you know, the importance of relying on each other and how they can all come together and work collaboratively in your best interest. It's your tiger team. It's your family office that you can create. And people want to do business with people they trust and they like, good people. And so finding that initial contact in whatever field you're looking for, and then leveraging that and finding out who they recommend and refer, inherently builds a good team. And again, everyone's personality is different. So find the right fit, and then from there, leverage that relationship in finding all of those other people to surround yourself, confide with, trust in, and thrive in.
Love it. All right. Very good. Well, this has been a treat for me, to each of you. Let me turn off. Let's see here.